Hi, friends. Today is Thursday, June 11th, and we have 62 more days until we see each other at school. Fingers crossed. All right, we are still reading The Enormous Egg, and yesterday the egg hatched, and we finally got to see what it was. And did you have any guesses what that little creature was? See if you're right. Okay. Dr. Zemer arrived while we were still staring at that thing in the nest. He jumped out of his car and came running out to us in the backyard. He was wearing a red bathrobe over his pajamas, and he looked pretty excited. He ran up to the nest and he looked in. His eyes opened up wide, and he knelt down on the ground and stared and stared and stared. After a long while, he said softly, "That's it. By George, that's just what it is." Then he stared for another long time, and finally he shook his head and said, "It can't be true, but there it is." He got up off of his knees and looked around at us. His eyes were just sparkling. He was so excited. He put his hand on my shoulder, and I could feel he was quivering. "An amazing thing has happened," he said, in a kind of a whisper. "I don't know how to account for it. It must be some sort of freak biological mix-up that might happen only once in 1,000 years." "What is it?" I asked. Dr. Zemer turned and pointed a trembling finger at the nest. "Believe it or not, you people have hatched out a dinosaur." Was that your guess? We just looked at him. "Sounds incredible, I know," he said, "and I can't explain it, but there it is. I've seen too many Triceratops skulls to be mistaken about this one." But how could it be a dinosaur?" Pop asked. "Oh, goodness gracious," Mom spluttered, "and right here in our backyard. It doesn't even seem hardly right, and on a Sunday, too." Cynthia was pretty interested by now, and she kept peeking into the nest and making faces the way she did when Pop brought a bowl of frog's legs into the kitchen one time. I guess girls just naturally don't like crawly things too much. To tell the truth, I don't either sometimes, but this thing that had just hatched out looked kind of cute to me. Maybe that was because it had taken care of the egg. I had taken care of the eggs so long. I felt as if the little dinosaur was almost one of our family. We stood around for a long while looking at the strange new thing in the nest, trying to let the idea soak in that we had a dinosaur. After Dr. Zemer calmed down a little, he and Pop tightened up the chicken wire to make sure the little animal wasn't going to crawl out. Dr. Zemer watched the poor old hen for a time, and then he wondered if perhaps she ought not to be taken out before she went out of her mind. Pop figured that it might be a good idea, and he picked her up and put her outside the pen. She acted a little bit dazed at first, but pretty soon she followed the other hens and began scratching for worms like the rest of them. "I've never seen such a surprised hen in my life," Dr. Zemer said. Mom suddenly began to notice how we all looked. "Cynthia, you're still in your pajamas," she said. "You get right into the house and get dressed. Walt, you've only shaved half of your face. My goodness, the neighbors will think we're crazy. We haven't even had breakfast yet. What am I thinking of, Dr. Zemer? Why don't you stay and have breakfast with us?" Dr. Zemer said, "Why, yes, thank you very much." And then he happened to look down at his bathrobe. "I'm not even dressed myself." "That's all right," Pop told him. "This is no time to worry about clothes, like normal clothes. You know, he's got his jammies on. We always wear bathrobes when our dinosaurs hatch." Dr. Zemer laughed, and we all went back into the house. Mom got a big breakfast, and we all tucked into the bacon and eggs and hot biscuits and honey as if we had been starving. Afterwards, Dr. Zemer leaned back and patted his stomach. "Oh, I haven't had a breakfast like this in years," he said. "Those biscuits are worth coming miles for, Mrs. Twitchell." "You probably don't have a chance to eat a decent meal without being interrupted, Mom said to him. "A doctor's life must be terribly hard with emergency calls all the time, day and night." Dr. Zemer looked at her kind of surprised. "You know," he said, "I think you've got me in the wrong profession. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a paleontologist. My patients have all been dead for 50 million years or so." I saw him wink at Pop. Cynthia's mouth dropped open. 50 million, she said. "Say, what is a paleon? Well, whatever it is you said." Dr. Zemer looked at me. Do you know, Nate? No, I said. Not exactly. I could hear Cynthia snicker at me. A paleontologist is someone who's interested in very ancient life, Dr. Zemer said. He goes around trying to find old bones and fossil remains of plants and animals so he can know what kinds of things lived long ago. Actually, I should call myself a paleozoologist because I'm particularly interested in animal life, like dinosaurs, for example. That was why I was very anxious to see what came out of this egg of Nate's. And here they are. I want to show you before we get too far away. This is them having breakfast as a family. Well, I never, Mom said. So that's why you thought the egg might hatch out. I certainly hoped it would anyway, Dr. Zemer said. You see, all we've had to work on so far is fossils, bones, teeth, footprints, and so on. Naturally, we haven't been able to be sure about many things because up until today, nobody has ever seen a live dinosaur. As a matter of fact, no one was even sure that dinosaurs hatched out of eggs until Roy Chapman Andrews found some dinosaur eggs in the Gobi Desert in 1923. So you see, this dinosaur in your backyard here is tremendously important, and scientists all over the world are going to be grateful to Nate and his family for taking care of a very valuable egg. Dr. Zemer had been talking so much that he had forgotten about the biscuit he held in his hand, but now he broke it open and put a dab of butter on it. He looked around the kitchen and frowned a little. This is such a nice, peaceful place, you know? But now the trouble begins. When the news gets out, the scientific world's going to go crazy. I'm afraid it might change things quite a bit around here. Science has done an enormous amount of good for the human race, but it rarely makes things more peaceful. When I sent a telegram to my colleagues at the National Museum, colleagues are people you work with, so like the teachers I work with, those are my colleagues. The colleagues at the National Museum saying that when I tell them that I have seen a live Triceratops, they're going to take the first plane out of Washington. If they believe me, that is, then there will be an official announcement to the press, and right after that, there will be crowds of scientists and other inquisitive people from all over here and there, and it'll be a big hullabaloo. I love that word, hullabaloo. Just means like a big commotion, lots of people. It will make your quiet little backyard look like Union Station. People will be coming and going and stepping in your flower beds and leaving cigarette wrappers all around. I hate to upset your lives here that way. Well, now, do we have to tell anybody we've got a dinosaur? Mom said. I don't see why it's anybody's business but our own. Dr. Zemer smiled and shook his head. They'd find out anyway, Mrs. Twitchell, whether we told them or not. Besides, I owe it to my colleagues to tell them about anything I discover. I expect them to do the same for me. We scientists don't like to keep secrets from each other. We're just not made that way. Well, we could send it away to a museum or a zoo, Cynthia said. Then all those crowds of paleo people could hang around the museum and they wouldn't bother us at all. Dr. Zemer looked around at me. How about it, Nate? Would you let your dinosaur go to a museum? I could take him to the National Museum in Washington where I work. I would promise to take the very best care of him. But I wouldn't get to see him then, I said. I don't think I'd like that very much. I'm not a scientist, but I'm kind of interested in him too. I mean, you don't get a chance to have a dinosaur of your very own very often, you know. Well, I can't see as how I blame you, Nate, Dr. Zemer said, but I really feel that I have to tell the other scientists about this. So, what'll we do? Tell you what, Pop said. I think Nate's got the right to keep the dinosaur if he went to all that trouble to hatch it out. And I guess the doctor has a responsibility to tell the world what he knows. So, it looks as if Dr. Zemer had better go ahead and send his telegram, and the rest of us will just brace ourselves for the shock as best as we can. Maybe we can figure out some way to work it so that we won't be completely swamped. Now, let me see, Dr. Zemer said, rubbing his chin. How would this be? We could make some rules about visiting hours, say from 8 in the morning until supper time, or whatever you like, and then let in just a few people at a time to avoid crowding. Oh my gosh, this reminds me of what we're going through today, how only a few people can go into stores at a time. Just reminds me of that. And then there's the telephone. I don't know what you could do about that. That can be an awful nuisance if it rings all day and all night. Oh, Mrs. Beebe can take care of that, Mom said. She can tell them to wait until morning if they call at night. She's very good at that. And I can answer the phone in the daytime, Cynthia said. I could be a secretary. It would be fun. When the phone rang, I would pick up the receiver and say, "Good morning, this is Mr. Twitchell's residence." And then I would write down their names and all that. It would be a very good experience for me, wouldn't it, Mom? And I could be the keeper, I said. I would say, "Step this way, ladies and gentlemen. Watch out for the petunias there, sir. This is the only living the only living dinosaur in the world, and no, it's the only known living dinosaur, Nate," Dr. Zemer said. "We must be scientific about this, of course." He turned to Cynthia. "All right then, young lady, here's your first job. Do you have a pencil and paper?" She grabbed the pencil and pad from the telephone box and sat down again. "All set?" Dr. Zemer said. "I'd like you to send this wire, collect, to Alfred Kennedy, United States National Museum, Washington, D.C. He waited while Cynthia wrote this down and then said, and they don't usually put complete sentences when they're sending like a telegram. "Have day-old Triceratops alive. Come quick. Signed, Zemer." He could see Cynthia was having quite a bit of trouble with Triceratops, so he spelled that out for her. Then he leaned back and chuckled to himself. Wish I could see Kennedy's face when he reads that. Well, I must go back and get dressed. We'll probably have a few hours before things start popping. I'll come back up after dinner, which is lunch. That's what they used to say in the olden days. Lunch was dinner. I'll come back after dinner, Nate, and we'll work up some sort of pen for that animal of yours, and we can give him a little food. Thank you all very much for the breakfast. Oh, and I want to show you a picture of Cynthia getting all serious about being a secretary. When he had gone, Mom began bustling around. "Hurry up, Cynthia, send off that telegram, and then while you're doing the dishes, I'll straighten up upstairs. Nate, you better go out and milk the goat, and then get washed and put on your good suit. We only have 3/4 of an hour before church." "Do we have to go to church today, Mom?" I asked. "I've got an awful lot to do for that dinosaur before people start coming to look at it. I should think we could skip church just this once when such an important thing has happened. Dr. Zemer said the scientific world's going to go crazy, didn't he?" "Never mind that," Mom said. "There's no reason to give up going to church just because we've got a dinosaur out back. Get a move on now." So chapter 6 we will do. Tomorrow I don't think I'll have time to read. We'll see. I might end up doing it on Saturday instead, just because I'm going to be out of town for one day. Okay, I'm going to go to the beach. Yay! All right, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.